This is an extraordinary thing, isn't it? Because it's all orchestrated on social media. In this case, on TikTok, and it's, hey, come into London, stand outside JD Sports, let's go in and let's steal whatever we fancy. Is basically the punchline of this story, isn't it?
It is indeed, but in many regards, this is a good news story for the Metropolitan Police. As things stand, the mass looting didn't occur. They didn't go and ransack these shops. Police were ahead of the game, which is really very reassuring because in the past they've not been particularly on board certain social media sites. So they've clearly taken some learning from past experiences. A note of caution, though.
Yes.
If we end up in a situation like 2011 with mass rioting at various locations, and of course, I sincerely hope we don't, but if we do at some point, the speed with which social media can organise and spread and move those who would want to commit crime is a grave concern.
And you know, the word riot seems to me to be misapplied here, because this isn't an uprising against social injustice, bad treatment by the police, racism, homophobia, some kind of riot to show social disquiet, young people, you know, taking some kind of message on board and acting to kind of bring this home. It's not that at all, is it? It's just fancying a nice jolly and some free trainers, isn't it?
Yeah, it's stupidity and it's criminality,
Yes.
or it certainly would have been. There's, to an extent, the police have made a rod for their own back, though, with regards to shoplifting, for example,
Well,
because the police surrendered the streets because they said they had to go and do other things many years ago. And consequently, shoplifters are not really prosecuted in any sort of numbers that they should be these days. And of course, these young ne'er-do-wells, they know that kind of thing. We've seen footage very recently from the Co-op just a week or two ago, where people have been walking into stores and stealing with impunity. And many large retailers have got a very short-sighted policy of non-intervention by their staff and their security staff. So these thieves know this.
Well, I had a Co-op manager on the show saying that when the gangs come smashing their way into the stores, and they don't just walk in through the door, they kind of smash in. They've got things in their hands. I don't know whether they're, you know, clubs or rackets or whatever they're doing. They're not knives, I don't think, but they're just bashing things up as they come in. It's kind of frightening. There are lots of them at once. It's noisy. It all happens in one sort of blur. The shop assistants and fellow shoppers are terrified because they know what the hell's going on. They call the police, of course, and the police don't come.
Absolutely.
They just don't show up at all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that, of course, breeds confidence amongst criminals because they know they can go and steal and there will not be any consequences. And this is an extension of that today. They were just broadening it out and thinking, well, let's go and steal on a vast scale. Let's go and loot and pillage. But of course, the Met were across it and they deployed the resources appropriately.
Yes.
Senior police officers have been saying recently that they will investigate all crimes. And I welcome that, although I'm not holding my breath as to whether it actually does happen. But we need to be intolerant of the crimes that don't have a significant value in cash to them, of the crimes that affect us all, the bike thefts, the mobile phone thefts, the car thefts, the domestic burglaries, all of these kind of crimes, which so insultingly have been called low level by the police in recent times.
Yes.
They are not low level, they should not be tolerated, and they should be properly investigated and prosecuted.
In 2011, there was a proliferation of outbreaks of rioting, looting, pillaging and everything else in all different places at once, which made it incredibly difficult, didn't it, for the police to get a handle on it? Because it kept bobbing up here and popping up over there. And there was a kind of deft use of social media, which meant that the police weren't really onto it until slightly too late each time. There was all of that going on, wasn't there? So
Yes.
if today they hadn't just had one single attempt in Oxford Street, if it was breaking out in, you know, the suburbs and also in South London and also something in the middle in Central London and everything else, it would have been much harder, wouldn't it, for the police to assemble the kind of intimidating presence they did with the horses and with everything else. And there's a likelihood that if they'd scattered their approach a bit more, they would have been much more successful, isn't there?
Very much more difficult for the police to deal with when they're dealing with multiple outbreaks of serious disorder in multiple locations. One thing that will slightly weigh in their favour is that the Police Control and Command Centre has been much updated since then, so that may give them a slight benefit. But yes, let's remember, TikTok wasn't a thing in 2011
No.
now. It's the speed of these new social media sites to which millions of young people subscribe. And it may be those people that foolishly get drawn into criminality if we end up having a rioting situation. But the police will take some learning from today, and I think they deservedly should have some praise if it doesn't manifest itself now.
Yep.
And I hope that in future, with regards to rolling it out over multiple locations, they really get their thinking caps
And
on.
I also think there will be parents who need to know where their kids were today.
Most
And need to
definitely.
ask the question, where were you? Were you there? Did you go there? Where were you? If you weren't there, where were you? Show me your phone. Let's see the pictures you took today. Where were you supposed to be? Now, what the hell were you doing? There needs to be some kind of parenting going on as well, don't you think?
Well, we know that absent parenting is such a factor in much more serious criminality as well, particularly the carrying of knives and the using of knives,
Yes.
often with fatal consequences. Of course, there are other factors, they are multiple. But I'm a father of 3, and I knew where mine were 24/7.
Yeah, I'm a mother of 2, and I hope I did too. I'm not 100% sure, because I know my parents may have thought they knew where I was, and they wouldn't always have quite known, but nevertheless. Peter, thank you very much indeed.